Hey guys, Chelsea here, and in this video we're going to talk about this bit, the envy of mediocrity for excellence. This one it's a pretty weird phrasing, but the basic idea here is, okay, so if someone is envious, they want something that someone else has, right? And you can be envious of, someone's car that they have because it's good, or, someone's intelligence that they have in math or something like that, right? Whatever it is, it can be anything. You just want what they have. So, the envy of mediocrity for excellence. What it's saying is that mediocre people envy what excellent people have. Okay, now this gets into a good bit of cynicism here, right? In general, in the world, people often think that people who are mediocre, just like not that great at stuff, right? Like fine, but not very good. That's a kind of crappy thing to say about a person anyway, but people often think that those people are very envious and negative and cruel towards anyone who's good at stuff, right? So there's all these phrases that get thrown about, like, oh, the meek shall inherit the earth. Okay, that's pulled out of the Bible, wildly out of context, and that's not really what it means, but it's often used as this phrase of, like, yeah, like being weak is like people who are weak are gonna like take over and take charge and overcome and whatever, but it's often not presented as like, oh yeah, if we don't know stuff, we're gonna like learn more stuff and be smarter. It's a lot of things are presented as like, let's tear down people who are really good at stuff. Let's tear them down. Let's make life harder for them so that everybody can be equal. In the name of equality, let's make sure everybody's equal. But instead of having mediocre people rise up to the level of excellence and everyone can be equal at the level of excellence, instead what is often pushed for in various circles is that the excellent people be sort of brought down. So, there are, dystopian fiction stories written about this. Stories where you have, people where if you're very, very pretty, then you have to wear a mask that has, a very, ugly painted mask on the outside. And the prettier you are, the uglier the mask is that you have to wear to make sure that you don't have any particular thing that makes you better than anyone else. You can't be better than anybody else. And if you're a very, very strong person, you have a lot of muscles, then you have to carry around like weights hanging from your arms and weights on your legs. You have to have a lot of very weighted down with, these like sandbags or whatever, to make it so that you still can't do, you still can only really do as much as a weak person can do, right? So you can't lift more than a weak person. And we make sure of that by adding these weights. It's a weird dystopian fiction society, all right? But it is a society that's created. And the point of it, in the first place, was to talk about this idea that a lot of times, people who see themselves, whether or not they see themselves as mediocre, they try to bring down people who have achieved this level of excellence, right? They try to kind of crap on those people. There's a very, very long list of books that have been written about this. Good literature, bad literature, it doesn't really matter, but there's a lot of stories about this. If you want a reading list, by the way, I can give it to you, but I wouldn't recommend reading them back to back. I did that. Terrible idea. It gets really depressing. So don't read them back to back. So that's the idea here, right? The idea is that these mediocre people who are not that smart, and they're not that pretty, or they're not that strong, or they're not that talented, they're not that good at managing a business, or whatever it is, right? And they look at other people who are pretty, and it's ferocious envy. So it's not just, oh, I wish I was pretty. It's sort of like, oh, that person is pretty, it's just like this disgust and hatred. It turns into this horrible hatred in this weird way. So, that's the idea. And then, Mulcahy is saying, okay, it becomes the ruling passion of all systems of job holders. This is probably a bit hyperbolic. This whole thing is probably a bit hyperbolic. We know that Mulcahy is a little bit, exaggerated at times. But, so I don't think it's true that every system of job holders has this. I don't think it's true that every person who is, maybe not as good at stuff is very, very, maliciously envious of people who are good at stuff. But that's the idea here. So he's saying that this is a ruling passion in systems of job holders, that these mediocre people will just really have it out for you if you are in any way good at anything. So let's take that and let's tackle the next couple questions.